Morning everybody from a wet day here in Shanghai. So we've had one day of dry action. Andre Lotter and I are in the commentary box for free practice 3 of this weekend. We had 2 practices yesterday, the qualifying and an E-Prix in the dry, Andre, but very different conditions for everyone who's woken up in Shanghai today. But let's have a look at the calendar. As we can see, yesterday's race was won by Maximilian Günther, his second win of the season after he won in Jeddah earlier this season. And it was just one of those Maxi Günther's days, wasn't it? But he was unbeatable.
Very unbeatable. When he's on that form, it's very hard for everybody. And they had a great car balance and managed fantastically everything throughout the race.
Just have a lovely look at the Bund there in Shanghai. This is the entry list for the weekend. No real changes there from where we started off the season. And at the moment, the World Championship still being led by Oliver Rowland in the Nissan team. His main rivals had a pretty tough day yesterday. The Porsche team, neither driver scoring points, so that was slightly problematic. But as you can see, Zane Maloney from Barbados, they get lots of thunder showers and storms there, but I don't know if he's done much racing in the wet.
Never been there, so I don't know, but yeah, he's definitely looking for points, so hopefully that will help him if he's used to racing the wet.
Antonio Felix da Costa's hair looks like he's got his wet setup on. Robin Freins, he's got to be used to a bit of rain from the Netherlands, of course, so finding his way into the track this morning as well. Tom Brooks, are you awake now?
I am indeed. Thank you very much, Corinne. Looking forward to this one, round 11 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. Let's take a closer look at the Shanghai International Circuit then. Well, it is wet this morning and the drivers are going to be contending around this 3-kilometre long track. Of course, if you watch Formula 1, this circuit will be quite familiar to you, but Formula E has been coming here since last year and it's proven to be exciting in terms of the racing action. This was the race start yesterday, which saw Pascal Wehrlein coming through from the second row of the grid all the way around the outside of the race to lead through turn 1. Then you come in towards turn 2, that increasing or decreasing radius corner, I should say. That's where attack mode is activated on the outside of the corner. Then you flick it into the left-hander of turn 3. There's actually quite a drop-off that the camera doesn't do justice to in terms of the gradient. On the run down through turn 4 into the fast kick of turn 5, turn 6, you can see some fast action there. Turn 7 and
I think we'll see Tom, the overtaking. This was a fantastic move at the end of the race. Yesterday, Jean-Eric Vergne, very opportunistic. And then we saw the 2 Nissans getting so close to each other. Norman Natter having cut across the grass there. But it's going to be a very different race. In wet conditions, Andre, we're going to see drivers using different lines, trying to hunt for the grip. But I guess the first question is, are the track conditions safe enough for the cars to head out on this very soggy day?
Yeah, let's see. It looks like it's very wet out there. They had a first taste at the last race in Tokyo with a lot of water as well there, so the drivers know the grip to expect. Even though here there's a bit more space, you can try a bit more risk and see if it's doable. But could be that yeah, we might need to have some delays because really. Falling down a lot of rain there.
Yeah, wetter than the submarine's number plates out there, unfortunately, at the moment. You can see a lot of standing water on the circuit through turn 7 and turn 8. We understand pit lane is scheduled to open at the normal time, so coming up very shortly indeed. And drivers are in their car ready to go. The question is, what will await them as they head out onto the track? And will they have any grip, crucially, as well? A lot cooler in terms of the air conditions and subsequently the track temperature as well. But the green flag flies, the light comes on at the end of pit lane, and FP3 does get underway in the wet conditions here in Shanghai as 22 drivers filter out onto the circuit. Looking forward to seeing what's going to happen here for this one. A big step into the unknown.
Look at the reflection on the track.
Not a good sign. That is not a good sign.
It's
like this.
Unbelievable, isn't it? So Taylor Barnard has jumped up into 2nd place in the World Championship after his podium finish yesterday. Another outstanding weekend so far by the rookie, you have to say. But look at that, Andre, the battle for... I mean, Rowland is in a world of his own. He's nearly 100 points in the lead. But from 2nd to 5th now, super tight, just 14 points.
Yeah, it's super. Oh, we just see the drivers having aquaplaning already, so I'm not sure how long this session will go.
So quick reminder on what to focus on. So the brake warm-up and tire temp is main key, as it was announced by the race director. Slippery surface between turn 4 to turn 6 to pay attention the first lap to judge how the grip is, and similar between turn 9 to turn 10.
All right, well, that's quite obvious. I would say try just to find some grip. But yeah, Taylor Barnard, amazing performance. But yeah, it's I think a season where everyone is having some ups and downs, except from Roland being very consistent up there. Of course, great performance, but it's like a double effect because no one can really keep up with him in terms of consistency, not just performance, but regularly being in the points to challenge him. So yeah, and it's interesting. Yesterday he was asking for Norman Nato's help. I don't think he really needs it for the championship. It's such a big lead.
I tell you what, though, you're just thinking about those sort of radio messages from that engineer. It drives me mad, isn't it, when they just state the obvious. So Tom, I'm sure you have a phrase for stating the obvious, but that was, I just look at it and go, the drivers aren't 2-year-old children, are they?
Yeah, it looks wet, it is wet, and yeah, there's not a lot of grip out there on the circuit. Let's have a look here at Oliver Rowland. This is on his outlap from the pit lane, so going through turn 5 and aquaplaning there. I always remember in F1, Adrian Sutil doing a similar thing. Back, I think it was 2009 when we did a wet race there, and he aquaplaned at the same point, ended up in the barrier on the left-hand side. Rowland there, lucky to save it.
Try to find more grip in the grass, maybe?
He saved it somehow.
Rallycross line.
Yeah, I mean, I did the wet race in 2010 there, and it's so tricky because you can't quite see from here, but there's a lot of elevation changes. You know, the water flows down from turn 1 towards the start-finish straight when you turn into it. Yeah, I tell you what, you see that camera angle down at turn 6. I have a lot of sympathy for our camera people out there today because it can't be fun. Whoever's down there at turn 6, well done to you for braving the conditions.
Look at Gunther here, sliding around like a granny on ice skates, isn't he? Trying to find some grip.
Yeah, trying to put some slip angle, so to put some temperature or find some kind of friction on the tires. But these tires are really low grip in the wet. Like it's compared to other, like to the Michelin tire, for example, that we had in past. It's a completely different compound, and yeah, it's really tricky to drive.
So just Verline coming. Okay, and now Roland coming in the straight line, and looks good. Position looks good.
So a bit of team radio there for Max Günther, just talking to his race engineer, the winner from yesterday, DS Penske, scoring their first ever 1-2 finish in Formula E history.
This is just survival, these conditions, isn't it? It's just, you know, they're just trying to find where the puddles are, and he's found one there. As I said, that's the point I was talking about. The water flows down from turn 1, and you kind of get to this valley, because actually the start-finish straight is a little bit downhill, and then you have the steeper downhill of turn 1. There's a valley just at the bottom there, near the pit exit, about the place where you have to turn into turn 1, Andre, isn't it?
Yeah, not ideal to have these kind of rivers there on the braking points, and but I guess the whole track is a river at the moment, so they're fighting everywhere.
But this is going to be a crucial session.
He's off,
and onto the gravel. Is he going to keep it out of the barrier? Just about. Driver's eye view from Maximilian Günther. Save of the century there.
That is the same place where Roland aquaplaned, so clearly. Now that's the information that the engineers should be telling the drivers, right? Watch out for aquaplaning, entry of turn 6 over the crest. There's a lot of standing water there, and you know that's the stuff that I want to be hearing from an engineer if I was in the cockpit.
Yeah, tricky times for the drivers as they try to find some grip. Lap times, of course, as you would imagine, absolutely nowhere near what we saw yesterday. 26 seconds slower on average than the times we were seeing in the dry here. Problem the drivers have, I was talking to someone down at Cupra Kiro earlier in the weekend, and they were stating that they just can't get heat into the surface of the tyre. That's why they've got minimal grip in the wet conditions.
Well, I think maybe we should just explain that a little bit for all the Free Practice 3 fans watching this morning. You've got a tyre that is an all-weather tyre, so it has to run in the wet as well as the dry. They don't change. unlike most other forms of motorsport. But that means that it's a bit too hard from what the drivers would ideally want for the wet conditions. You know, in other categories, whether it's sports cars or other single-seaters, the wet tyre is a much softer tyre compared to the dry, because it needs to generate heat and temperature. If they did that in Formula E, it would just completely wear out in the dry, and that's one of the challenges for the drivers. You've got this all-weather tyre, another driver going off at turn 5 is Dan Tincton there, and yeah, we need a bit of a rag on that camera lens, don't we, down turn 6?
We do. It's Supercross in Shanghai at the moment is the name of the game. Survival for the drivers. Red flag has just been flown after 6 minutes gone of the session. No surprise at all. That will be down to the track conditions proving to be very perilous, and as a matter of safety for the drivers here, that is why the session has been suspended.
What is the rule again? If they can't go into qualifying, what?
It'll be determined by the free practice results.
Yeah.
So, these results, yeah, exactly, which would determine that Nick Cassidy would be on pole position from Verne, Freins, Evans. The problem you've got is you've got two drivers, De Vries and Mortara, who weren't able to set representative lap times in their sessions.
Hi guys, this is Race Control speaking. After collecting some feedback from you, I decided to present red flag. We will observe the situation and I will keep you updated for the next part of the session. Thank you very much.
Well, let's see what happens, because what happens in free practice, unlike in qualifying, is the timer continues to count down, as you can see. So even though the session has been suspended, we're still on the clock effectively, and there's not much sign of the rain letting up. This is quite a similar situation to what we had in Tokyo a fortnight ago. We had wet weather like this, the difference being that we got free practice times in the bag and they determined the grid because qualifying got cancelled.
Yeah, and if we remember, Oliver Rowland made sure that he's topping those times in case there wouldn't be any qualifying, and here I'm not sure that all the teams are doing that.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, certainly, to see how this is going to work out. Will this determine the grid for qualifying? Will they decide to do something a little bit different? Because I guess you could argue, 6 minutes having run of a session, is that fair to determine the grid for qualifying? But, obviously this is all speculation. There's a possibility that the track conditions could improve between now and qualifying. There is a little bit of time to go between those sessions. You see the championship leaders there down at the bottom of your screen. Oliver Rowland still has a chance of becoming world champion in Jakarta, despite not the best day for him at the office relative to his recent performance. He finished 5th at the checkered flag, but given that he has had a multitude of victories so far in 2025, he was quite disappointed with the end result. The upshot is he needs to go into Jakarta with an 88-point lead in the Drivers' Championship in order to be in with a shout of wrapping it up in Indonesia. He's got 85 points at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's not a huge suspense. It's like, how soon can he get the championship? Yeah, it's just a matter of time, let's say, or points gap, obviously, in that case. But it's really looking good for him this year with the championship. And I think there will be more an interesting fight to see who is second and third.
The difficulty we've got as well with this session now having been suspended is the lack of wet running we're going to get ahead of qualifying, assuming, of course, that qualifying goes ahead as scheduled. Let's say that this session doesn't get resumed because of the track conditions. They've only had 6 minutes of wet track time, so it really is it's a proper step into the unknown, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But I think, lap by lap they will improve and try to make the best out of it. It's not that they can do much in these conditions. Like, of course you see gaps of 12, 13 seconds here, but these drivers didn't put any lap time. But there are some drivers who tried and they're like 3-4 seconds off. So definitely some teams figure things out a bit better than others. They're probably trying different tire pressures to make the tire work a little better. So any lap is always valuable in Formula E to try to learn something.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So you can see the classification as the timer continues to count down. Here's David Beckman. Now, if we look at Cupra Kiro, contrasting fortunes, Beckman qualified well, had a bit of a shocker of a race, finished down in 14th place after starting in 8th position. Whereas the reverse happened for Dan Tincton. He was down in 21st on the grid and came home 4th, battling for the podium at the end.
should have been second.
Yeah,
Almost.
yeah. I mean, if you were David Beckman, I think you'd be quite nervous about the seat, because actually Kiro made a lot of progress with the Porsche powertrain now, and you know there's some good investment, it seems, into that team. Tictum's getting results. It's now maybe an attractive place to go for a JQ, a Van Dorn, a Sam Bird, Taylor Barnard. Lots of drivers. We think there could be movement in the market. So if you're Beckman, you've got half a season, maybe less than half a season now, to try and show why you should be there for next year.
Well, he's one of two drivers yet to get off the bottom of the scoring board, the other being Zane Maloney. But you can forgive Zane Maloney because the Lola Yamaha Apt has been quick at certain points. We've seen that with the podium with Lucas Di Grassi, but inconsistently fast is probably the politest way of putting it. So we'll see what Beckman is able to do in the latter half of this season, but it certainly is now crunch time, and there's a lot of whispers starting to begin around the paddock about who is going to be lining up where on the grid for season 12. What about this man here, Taylor Barnard? Where can he go? Yeah, so there is Taylor Barnard in the Neil McLaren garage, and of course Neil McLaren won't be continuing in the same guise in 2026 in Formula E, and I've been sort of wondering whether you're going to get someone like Nissan looking to try and poach him and stick him alongside Oliver Rowland. I mean, he knows Rowland, used to race for his kart team, good relationship that's on between the two. He knows the Nissan powertrain. If they're looking for a proper all-assault for the championship next year, I don't think that's a bad shout, is it?
Definitely not. If I'd be a manufacturer, definitely look at having him as a driver, because he's been delivering so well, and yeah, he has a lot of great years in front of him, and you can build something with him. It's obviously, he's young, but he's shown incredible maturity and so calm, also in control, and yeah, he's definitely showing that he has talent, but also what it takes in Formula E to do good races and to understand everything.
Yeah, there is the duo in the Andretti garage of Jake Dennis and Nico Müller.
Body language doesn't suggest anyone's doing anything anytime soon.
No. Nice warm cup of tea, I think.
Those conditions are not... And this is the trouble, right? The conditions won't improve if everyone's sitting in the pits as well, in terms of clearing water off the track. But if it's too dangerous, of course, you can't send them off.
Yeah, I wonder how this one is going to go down. Here is Nick de Vries, Jeremy Calanson on the left-hand side of your picture. He's been pretty instrumental into the restructuring and rebuilding of that team over the last couple of seasons. And well, they've been in great form in 2025, have Mahindra in 5th place in the team's championship after 10 rounds this year, and a podium finish for Nick de Vries back in Monaco as well. Consistent points for that team throughout the entirety of the season. In fact, Nick de Vries has only failed to score once this year, and that was the second race in Tokyo. Mortara on the other side of the garage has had a bit more of an inconsistent season. But yeah, that team very much rejuvenated, and both their drivers locked in for a contract until the end of next year at the earliest.
You know your stuff, huh?
Hey, well, I try to pretend I do.
They didn't score any lap time so far, so they just did an out-in. Not ideal for them, obviously, but maybe they wanted to wait and see what happens with the session.
Let's have a look at some of the aquaplaning then. This is through turn 5, on board here with Oliver Rowland. He got away quite lightly with that compared to some of the other drivers. We then saw Dan Tictum having a bigger off at the same corner, right off to the gravel, closer to the wall. And then Max Günther as well. This is the driver's eye view of Dan Tictum's moment. You can see it let go there, but he saved it very nicely, kept the car in as straight a line as possible, and back onto the tarmac after the gravel. This was Max Günther shortly after Tictum as well.
Good, he managed to get the direction correct again, because at some point he was pointing towards the wall, which would have resulted in a little bit of a crash for him.
Yeah, it makes your backside clench like a rabbit's nose, doesn't it, when you have a moment like that?
What was the line?
Backside like a rabbit's nose. Twitchy. Sound of silence says it all.
I need
a moment to process that. Anyway, yeah, you can see a lot of standing water, only 6 minutes of meaningful running in this session. We did have a lap time deleted for Mitch Evans right at the end of that one. The upshot is, it was Nick Cassidy who was quickest before the red flag fell with a 1:36.2. He was just under half a second faster than Verne.
Tom, I'm going to test your knowledge of the sporting regulations now.
Fire away.
If the conditions don't improve and we can't run qualifying, but we can run the race, does practice determine the grid order?
It does, yeah. We had the same situation in Tokyo where we had qualifying cancelled on the Saturday. So, yeah, the grid order will be determined by the practice results. So there is a good possibility that this could be how it sits for the grid. Let's go down, though, to Alexa in pit lane with just under 14 minutes left to go.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I'm down here with Ian James. I've just seen both of your drivers jump out of the car looking pretty soggy. What are they reporting conditions to be like?
Wet. It was pretty sketchy out there, to be honest with you. I think a lot of the drivers were coming on and saying that, they felt the session should be stopped, and I think Marik's taken the right decision. So there's no point in taking any more risks than necessary.
And where's the team mentality for how the rest of this day plays out? If FP2 ends like this and this is the quali result, or what are you guys now sort of thinking and planning?
Well, I'm useless with regulations, I'll put it out there, but my understanding is I think we needed to have a full session for the FP3 results to count, which we haven't had. So if we don't have quali, then it goes back to the FP2 results from yesterday. But we're just going to have to wait and see it. There's no point in trying to second guess this. We just wait and see what happens and then take it from there.
Well, no second guessing, but we might let you play weatherman. What's the forecast for the rest of the day?
More rain, I think. So, listen, I think the championship's taken the right decision together with the FIA to reschedule everything for today to give us the best chance of actually getting a race in. If it stays like this, I think now that we've got a red flag here, I think we're going to have to really take a view on what can happen with quali. But then let's keep our fingers crossed that it actually eases off a bit and we can get a race in later on.
Thank you so much, Ian. Fingers crossed.
So, confirmation from Ian James, the free practice 2 results will determine the grid for qualifying.
Tom Brooks, go study the regulations some more.
Hey, well, to be fair, it does say the practice results should determine it, but obviously we've only had 6 minutes of running and no meaningful lap times really set in the session. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. James Roster has actually made a really good point there down in pit lane as well. He said that if there is a green flag, which really seems unlikely at the moment, he expects all drivers to go out straight into full power attack mode to try and set a representative lap time, which would then determine the grid.
Tell you what, if it's FP2, that puts Nissan at the back, doesn't it? Roland to be last.
It does.
That'll be
and
fun.
Da Costa in the front.
Yeah, so the grid order from free practice 2, I've got it here in the commentary box. It would be Antonio Felix da Costa then on pole position, Taylor Barnard alongside him on the front row. Row 2 is De Vries and Gunther. Then you've got Hughes and Dennis, Casti and Van Dorn, Muller and Maloney completing the top 10. As Karun quite rightly said, it would be a disaster for Nissan because Nato would be 20th, Roland 22nd and last on the grid. So a big upset there for some drivers and not much sense that the session's going to go.
Free to send me early. I don't want to lose track time. So yeah, just want to go out and drive. And at the moment I feel obviously low grip, but especially the rear. There is no support entry and exit. That's why I'm thinking mechanical. I'll let you check.
This was obviously from earlier in the session. Gunther's out of the car and chatting with his teammates. Oh, look at that. Here we go. Look at that.
The radar, quite clearly stating that we've got a lot of weather and it's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon.
A lot of wet weather, yes. Yeah.
So I guess the yellow stuff is not good.
Yellow's bad. I mean, red is very, very bad, but this is not that. But I mean, if it's blue, that's a light enough rain that you can race. You know, we had in Monaco, we had Tokyo wet race as well.
Yeah, we did. That was wet to dry.
Yeah, the problem is that yellow band. So the yellow band passes through and there's a bit more blue, then at least we can get cars on track.
Yeah, I think that's the problem though, is that there's so much standing water at the moment. You know, I think a resumption of FP3 as it stands is quite unlikely, but we'll wait and see whether the rain decreases in intensity. The fans watching on in the grandstand would love for the session to resume in one form or another. taking a look here at Mitch Evans inside the Jaguar TCS Racing Garage. Shocker of a day yesterday for Jaguar by all accounts. Evans' race was pretty much done before it really started. He had an 80-place grid penalty, had to serve a drive-through in the race as well, so didn't really have much of a chance. Nick Cassidy, meanwhile, he got very unlucky to get caught up in the melee at the final corner with Mortara and Verne. Ultimately spun him round, put him right towards the back, and he never really recovered from there.
Yeah, I watched it back actually, and I thought, I think in hindsight Nick could maybe have done a bit more, because he left just about one car's width, and okay, he didn't know that there was a second car further in. I think in that early stage of the race, when, especially in a race where track position is not so important in the first 5 laps, I think you just better leave a bit of margin, It doesn't matter if you give a place there.
The margin he left also just for one car was very small.
That's what I mean. It was just about one. I think he could have done more to avoid that, really.
There is Taylor Barnard inside the Neon McLaren garage, now up to second in the Drivers' Championship. So, Andre, you've been in this position where we've had rain delays in these sessions. What are the drivers talking about? Because there's not been any meaningful running in this session.
They're complaining that there's no grip.
He looks like he should be talking about his homework at school. You forget how young he is. He speaks and drives with such maturity.
Yeah, I was just saying
young.
he can rent a car now. He's 21.
Today.
Yes, true. It's his birthday.
Yeah, 21 years old today is Taylor Barnard. Happy birthday to him. And, hopefully he can convert it into a strong result this afternoon. If the FP2 results do decide the grid, as is rumoured at the moment, he will be lining up in second on the front row for a second race in succession as well. So let's see how it works out in terms of that as we await confirmation as to how the grid will line up if quali is indeed cancelled. But still, as we say, plenty of time for that to change, because there is a fair amount of time between, well, it's a fair amount of time, hour and a half or so, between the end of FP3 and quali getting underway. Here is Norman Natto. Nissan, I think, were a bit disappointed yesterday. I think they had some issues with the battery and the temperature management towards the end of the race, Andre. We were concerned about that.
I'm going to have to take it back, what I said to you earlier, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
About the sporting regs. It seems like Ian James wasn't right and you were.
Well,
we've just had clarification. James Rosters just sent us a text because he's gone to see the FIA very helpfully. He splashed his way down the pit lane, braved the conditions. So thank you, James.
Well, I thought
clarified that FP3, so currently the timesheet, what we see now on the timing screen, would set the order if we get no more running before the race. So there we go.
Yeah, so that's because FP2 effectively is a different event to what we have today. So yesterday was round 10, today is round 11. The result you see on the screen, as we initially spoke about, would determine the grid order. So it would be Cassidy then who would start on pole, with Verne, Freitz, Evans and Da Costa close behind. 6 minutes left to go of the session. Sebastian Buemi keeping warm inside the Envision cockpit, but no sign of any running set to resume anytime soon here in this FP3 session.
So why didn't Mahindra go out, I wonder?
I don't know, maybe they were gambling on the rain decreasing and
there's nothing to gamble. Maybe hoping it would get better, not take any risk and keep the car safe. But from learning from Tokyo about the qualifying format, and if it gets cancelled, you want to be out there and set a lap time as soon as you can, right?
Well, that's what we heard from Gunter on the radio. He said, send me out early. I want to get a banker lap time in to give us a chance. The upshot is that Gunter is down in 17th place. That's because on his flying lap, he ended up going straight off onto the gravel, essentially, after aquaplaning through turn 5. So, yeah, it's not worked out well for Gunter so far.
This looks like a very serious conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's Gary Eckbold on the right, Nick Cassidy on the left. According to reports by the race, by the way, we understand that Nick Cassidy could be off to pastures new for 2026, leaving the Jaguar fold, and we think he's going to be going to a Stellantis-powered team for 2026, which will be exciting.
Interesting.
Oh, so the session will be extended until 8 o'clock local time here this morning. Now, we are at 7:25, so it's another 35 minutes.
Yeah.
So there you go, yeah, the time has just kicked on again. So essentially that's, it's more than double the track time, because it was only a 30-minute session to start with. So they're giving it as much of a chance as they possibly can for track conditions to improve.
You need a track blower.
You need those big jets. Yeah, but I think they only work if it stops raining. If water keeps falling from the sky, then it's...
He's very good with logic.
Only because I was at the Indy 500 last year, Andre, and it had rained in the middle of the day. And Roger Penske personally decided that the thing he needed was to get the big jets. So he saw the forecast a few days before the race, true story, called the people up at NASCAR and hired 6 of these massive jets from the NASCAR organizers, and they dried the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I could not believe. It sounded like there were fighter jets going around this track. And it dried. It dried the entire track in like 45 minutes, and we had a race.
I love that.
Unbelievable.
There was always that story of, I can't remember where, it was somewhere in America on a speedway where they sent actual road cars out on the track to dry it, sort of like overnight, essentially. This was pre-jet days, or, Roger Penske being able to finance track drying facilities.
No, but it's crazy to see. You suddenly realize how much heat comes off a fighter jet when you stand there and watch them drying the track.
Yeah, you can see a lot of standing water. This is down, I think it's either in the paddock or pit lane here. Right onto the entry of pit lane there, isn't it? And quite clearly, a lot of standing water, big river running across the circuit. So, not ideal conditions at all. And even the camera angle there showing you just the lack of visibility. Obviously, the rain's going to be splashing into that camera lens, so it does amplify it quite a bit. But no semblance of this session continuing at the moment. Whilst we wait for confirmation as to when this session will resume, let's go down and catch up with Jake Dennis, who's with our team in the pit lane.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I'm joined by Jake Dennis here in the pit lane. And Jake, you've dried off a little bit. How are conditions out there?
Pretty bad. Worse than Tokyo, which is impressive. Just with this macro and micro roughness of the circuit, which is basically like what the tarmac's made out of. It's just like a sheet of ice out there for us on track, so pretty undrivable with this amount of rain. So I'm not too sure what we can do. It's just so much standing water, and we can't even go anywhere near full throttle. So see cars aquaplaning off right now. So did the right thing to stop the session, but it's meant to be like this all day, so I'm not too sure what we're going to do.
So you touched on it at the end, there's no expectations for the weather to improve today then?
No, it should be like this and probably getting worse, to be honest. So, we'll have to wait and see, but hopefully a miracle happens and it stops raining. But it's really not meant to. It's only meant to get worse now.
And from your perspective, what do you want to see happen for the rest of the day? Do you want quali to go ahead? Would you rather stick with FP2?
I mean, I'd love to stick with FP2 because I'm top 10 and here I'm obviously, I haven't done a lap yet. So, but I don't know. It's so out there right now. We just obviously need to have the best safety for the drivers and the cars. Like, these things aren't cheap. So if you have 10, 15 guys crashing and it's not the best in the world. So we'll just do what's the best for the safety and we go from there.
Thank you, Jake. Cheers.
Well, classic British optimism there from Jake Dennis. I mean, he's used to this sorts of weather growing up in Britain. Unfortunately, not ideal conditions to go racing in. You don't need a car with 4 wheels. What you need is an Arc built by Noah and a 2x2 formation, I think, to try and clear this circuit, because there, as you can see there, waterlogged curbs on the inside, and as we said, track conditions not improving at this particular stage.
Yeah, not much you can do in these conditions apart from waiting and have a few goes and try again and sample if it's better or not. It could, if it's raining a bit less, it could change the dynamic and you can send the cars out, but it's...
Yeah, let's go down to catch up with Nissan's team principal, Tommaso Volpe. Roland and Nato currently 6th and 9th in this session.
I'm joined by Tommaso Volpe. Another glorious, nice, rainy race day in the office. You guys came out of Tokyo particularly well because you'd prepared for this. You knew that the rain was coming. Has that level of preparation been possible this week with this forecast in mind?
Well, we all knew that the second race would have been wet. So, yes, I guess everybody has done its own preparation. But let's see. I mean, it looks worse than worse. So let's see what happens.
And obviously FP2 was a little bit trickier for you guys. FP3's gone a bit better. What's your expectation if perhaps quali can't feasibly go ahead? Do you think it will be FP2, FP3, or what are you looking at?
Well, FP3 was much better for us, so I hope it's going to be FP3. But we also hope the quali is happening because it's good for the public and for the sport. It's always better to prove ourselves on the track.
And actually, we've noticed out in the grandstands, there's a handful of Nissan fans sitting there braving the rain. Just a word for everybody who's turned up today.
Well, cheer for us. We are leading the 3 championships, so hopefully we leave China in this position.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks to Tommaso Volpe. Thank you to Alexa down there in pit lane. Well, let's remain optimistic. Let's hope that qualifying does go ahead. This session has been extended, as you can see. 29 minutes left on the clock at this point. Still under red flag conditions as that timer continues to count down. We're looking here at Nick de Vries inside the Mahindra garage at the moment. One of 2 drivers not to set a time in that session. So if indeed FP3 does determine the grid, it will be back of the grid for both of the Mahindra cars. Nick de Vries would be just ahead of Edo Mortara, courtesy of the fact that he was on track sooner than his teammate.
He's definitely not looking at his own data, or neither the one of his teammate.
I think he's playing video games.
Yeah, a bit of Candy Crush going on there maybe for those some of these drivers. Let's get down and catch up with Sebastian Buemi in pit lane, currently P7.
Seb, one of our most experienced Formula E drivers, but quite how challenging was it out on track this morning?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of knew that that might be the lap that counts for qualifying. So currently P7, but yeah, I went off in turn 7. Just too much aquaplaning. I guess honestly the grip level feels good, but the amount of water is just too much, and you lose the car on the straight line just because the tires cannot, get rid of the water. But yeah, it was for everyone the same. So you just try to survive in those conditions, and we stay ready in case we go back in the car. But looking at the amount of rain, yeah, not sure it has changed much since 15 minutes ago.
So it's the rain. So it's less the rain that's the problem here, and perhaps more the standing water then that was giving you issues out on track.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's too much water because it rains and the asphalt doesn't drain enough the water, and the tire cannot drain the water either. So at some point, your tires are not in contact with the asphalt anymore, and then you lose it on the straight, which is, yeah, it's tough. So again, I think even if I wished I would have done a faster lap, I guess the red flag was the right thing to do in those conditions.
And if we do manage to go racing later on today, how do you feel about the package in the wet weather?
Well, I think generally we seem to be more competitive in the wet than the dry. So it's just about maximizing the opportunities. So far, I think we've done a good job in Tokyo and Monaco. So if it rains again today and we do race, then we need to get as many points as we can.
Thank you so much, Seb.
Yeah, good to hear there from Sebastian Buemi saying that the grip level felt good out there. I could only assume he must have been moonlighting in E1 in the week between Tokyo and here. Right, so whilst we wait for some news about the continuation of this session, still under red flag conditions here with 26 minutes left on the clock, we'll head down to Saunders and James in the pit lane.
赛道的情况做进一步的了解以及勘测。
I started it and I had red flag there. But for me, there is no speed. So.
Sure, you never know what's going on.
Yeah. 10 seconds. Yeah. So your next lap was not 350.
Across the line, I not even turned on, but
As a 300 down.
Sounds like you want to work on that.
yeah.
We can compare to the medals compared to the and really activate out of the gain already.
Dan, I saw you watching the screen just now saying, guys, you're wasting time. What are you thinking right now?
I'm thinking that we could have all been in bed for another 4 hours. But, you know, it's good to try. But look, it depends how diplomatic of an answer I can give here. It's just too much surface water for this tyre. Like, I think maybe in slightly better condition should be fine, but look, it needs to stop raining for about an hour. Like, the surface water's just not going to clear, and the tyres just don't clear it. So, yeah, it's kind of a foregone conclusion, really.
And I saw you taking a little excursion whilst you were out there. Can you explain to people what it is like trying to drive these cars?
Well, I nearly had a generational shunt, to be honest. And yeah, I just went through turn 5. I wasn't expecting it. It was like my first kind of push lap, because theoretically they're going to use these times for qualifying, so you have to sort of get on it quite quickly. And as soon as the car aquaplanes, I mean, the worst thing you can do is panic and like brake or try and do, because then you'll spin and then you'll be in the wall. So as soon as it aquaplanes, you just have to, your immediate reaction just has to be calm, sort of almost let it aquaplane. And then when I got to the gravel, I knew there'd be more grip, which is ironic, isn't it? But there's more grip on the gravel, so sort of aquaplaned onto the gravel and
Hi
then
everyone,
managed
this is
to
Race
sort
Control
of keep
speaking.
out the wall. But yeah,
Just
I mean,
a quick
it
note.
could have been quite a large
Due to
accident.
the adverse
Glad it wasn't. If we do manage to get racing later on today, how do you guys feel about the state of your package?
Well, the problem is with this standing water, like, I don't think, well, we can't practice on it, we can't qualify on it, and we definitely can't race on it, because like the spray is just going to be horrific. Like even in practice then, like we were all trying to get a 5-10 second gap from everyone. So yeah, trying to remain composed now. So yeah, I think racing can't happen like this, I'm afraid. So let's hope it sort of dries up. You know, by the time it stopped raining for a couple of hours, if that happens today, if we all drive around in a train under the safety car, we should clear a bit of water and maybe it should be okay, but I'm not hopeful, if I'm brutally honest.
Thank you so much, Dan. Best of luck for today.
something I think. It's like that for the whole house. I could do that. Yeah. Try it with that much more. This one with